name is Swami Kripalu Center. To his followers, he is affectionately known as Bapuji. Bapuji is one of the greatest living masters of yoga in the world today. His story provides a remarkable example of how an ordinary human being can transform his life through spiritual practices. He often teaches through simple parables that contain great truth. This story is being translated by Yogi Amrit Desai, who has brought Bapuji's teachings to America.
When the onion grew up, there was no smell of saffron. There was no smell of the rose flower. It came onion, just the way it was. એમાં સૌંદર્ય ના આવ્યું. Bapuji says the same way. You took the picture of Bapuji from up, from down, from the left side, from the right side. But the picture of Bapuji remains the same.
In India, where Bapuji has spent most of his life, he has attracted thousands of followers. On special occasions, they gather from all over the world to listen to his message of eternal truth. It is a message of love, arising from his own spiritual struggles. It is a message which inspires and transforms others, because it is based on Bapuji's direct personal experience. It comes from a lifetime spent in search of God.
નિમિત્ત જ બનવાનું છે, કાર્ય થઈ જશે. મારા મનમાં ભગવાન બ્રહ્મેશ્વરજી માટે ભવ્ય પ્રાસાદ બંધાવવાનો અને સંસ્કૃત વિશ્વવિદ્યાલય સ્થાપવાનો શિવ સંકલ્પ સાથે લઈને પાછા કર્યા.
For the past 30 years, Bapuji has spent 10 hours a day in meditation. In deep meditative states, Bapuji often does spontaneous chanting and dance-like movements called mudras. These gestures are visible evidence of the intensified life energy working within his body.
Om Didi Garavalasvare Nantadu.
Bapuji's life began in a small village in western India, north of Bombay. From early childhood, spiritual practices were an important part of his family life. His father died when he was 7, and the family went through a period of great financial hardship. At the age of 18, he left his village and came to the huge, teeming city of Bombay. As a young man of high spiritual ideals, he soon became disillusioned by the greed and suffering he saw around him. He felt life had no purpose. In despair, he made plans to commit suicide. As his last act before taking his life, he went to his favorite temple to pray. Bapuji was sobbing so hard that he scarcely noticed an old holy man approach him. "My son, do not take your life." Bapuji was astonished, for he had told no one of his plan. This man was to become the most compelling force in Bapuji's life. His name was Dadaji. For over a year, Babaji stayed with this great teacher and learned the disciplines of yoga. With these tools and with Dadaji's encouragement, Babaji began the long path of self-realization. He could not know that these practices would transform an ordinary body and mind into the enlightened state of a great yogi. One day, Dadaji mysteriously told Babaji that at some time in the future, he would learn his guru's true identity. Shortly thereafter, Dadaji disappeared without a trace. Without Dadaji, Babaji felt that he had lost the most complete love he had ever known. For the next 10 years, he went back into the world where he taught music, wrote drama for a repertory company, and helped run a school. At the age of 31, Babaji again felt the futility of worldly affairs. He decided to become a Swami and was initiated by an old monk named Swami Shantananji. In becoming a Swami, Babaji renounced all worldly possessions. However, he committed himself to return to the world, this time as a spiritual teacher. With nothing more than the clothes on his back and a small pot for carrying drinking water, he wandered from village to village, teaching the ancient Vedic texts. Often the entire village would come to hear him speak, entranced by his message of love. Many of those who were attracted to him eventually became his disciples. One of these was the young Amrit Desai.
He was so powerful. As he spoke, he was so magnetic, and he captured everybody's heart. When he first came in my town, there were so many people who were just not used to come to Swamis and listen to him, but they will all close their shops and they will always be there. And particularly me, I'll always find a specific spot and just be right next to him. And I'll sit very straight, very firm, and always be on this spot on time. And I was desiring so much that Babaji would look at me and would love me and would allow me to serve him. And that's exactly what happened.
At this time, Babaji's practices of yoga postures, breath control, and meditation led to the bodily awakening of the energy called kundalini. This evolutionary energy lies dormant within everyone, and in certain individuals it is awakened by advanced yogic practices. Under the power of this energy, Babaji began to experience spontaneous posture flows and other dance-like mudras. These movements purified and energized his body at an accelerated rate. He was soon spending 10 hours a day in meditation, a practice he has continued every day of his life. His state of inner peace and bliss became apparent to all around him. Twice during this period of his life, his guru Dadaji appeared briefly to him in a vision. Deeply affected by these experiences, Babaji withdrew into silence, communicating only by gestures and by writing on a slate. For 12 years, he maintained a discipline of total silence, directing his whole being towards union with God. In 1955, Babaji was invited to visit the holy shrine of Kayavarohan. On a tour of the village, he was shown an ancient statue that had been buried in a farmer's field. Babaji was stunned, for he recognized in the statue an unmistakable likeness of his guru Dadaji. That evening, Babaji entered into a deeper state of meditation than ever before. Dadaji appeared before him and revealed his true identity as an incarnation of the Hindu god Shiva. He then directed Babaji to build a temple and to restore Kaya Varohan as a spiritual center for India and the world. Babaji had no money or possessions, and the people of the area were very poor. How could he possibly build a beautiful temple? Nevertheless, he began the project with selfless love and dedication. The project took 19 years to complete. In 1974, the temple was dedicated to Dadaji and the path of eternal truth. The temple was to be a home for the ancient statue which had been buried for almost 2,000 years. In a sacred ceremony, the statue was installed in the newly completed temple. In 1977, Babaji agreed to visit America in response to the many requests from his North American disciples. His arrival in America brought him to a home that already carried his name, the Kripalu Yoga Retreat in Pennsylvania. It had been founded only 7 years before by his disciple Yogi Amrit Desai. The ashram residents, who are followers of Yogi Desai, greeted Babaji as their spiritual grandfather. They regard him as the source of their guiding philosophy of love and service.
Babaji says, I feel very hesitant because I cannot express myself in your language. And yet, at the same time, everything I express will be in our language. It is the language of love. Since I love you and you love me, our language is common.
When Babaji saw the beautiful ashram, he said, if I had chosen a retreat in the sacred Himalaya mountains, I would have found no more beautiful place for my spiritual practices than this. In America, Babaji continues the same disciplined routine of daily practices that he did for over 25 years in India. His day begins before dawn with hours of meditation. When meditating, he enters a state of consciousness that completely transcends the ordinary limits of the mind. After his meditation, Babaji sets aside several hours for writing. A brilliant scholar, he has written numerous books on the science of yoga and on Indian classical music. At mid-morning every day, Mataji, the wife of Yogi Desai, prepares Babaji's food with special care and brings it to his retreat. For Mataji, this is an act of loving service, the same kind that transformed Babaji's heart while he was living with Dadaji. Babaji eats alone and in silence, according to the Brahmin tradition. Part of every day in Bapuji's life is given to teaching his close disciples. As Dadaji once did with him, he takes great care to pass on to others his deep understanding of the yogic scriptures.
There are 2 times Bapuji gives darshans to us. Morning about 10:30 and in the evening towards 3 o'clock.
ભગવાન શ્રી કૃષ્ણચંદ્ર કહ્યું છે કે સર્વધર્માન પરિત્યજ્ય મામેકમ શરણમ વ્રજ અહમ ત્વા સર્વપાપેભ્યો મોક્ષયિષ્યામિ મા શુચઃ.
Lord Krishna says to Arjuna,
ભગવાન કહે છે
release your attachments to all actions, both good and bad.
ધર્મનો પરિત્યાગ કર.
If you will surrender to me with your whole heart, I will lift you from the results of all your good and bad deeds. I'll free you from your karma.
આશ્ચર્ય થાય કે પુણ્યને છોડવાનું કેમ કહે છે, ધર્મને છોડવાનું કેમ કહે છે. ધર્મ ન છૂટવો જોઈએ. જો કે એક વાત છે કે ખરો ધર્મ છૂટતો જ નથી.
We are all in this world on a mission. We have to do satkarma or good deeds, but then we have to go beyond that too. When we surrender the results of our actions, we act from the center of peace within. Then we achieve liberation.
Bapuji's teachings of love and service for others are carried by his disciples to the growing number of those who seek truth. Here, Yogi Amrit Desai leads the ashram residents in early morning yoga practices which parallel Bapuji's own meditations. The example of Bapuji's dedication and discipline has been a great inspiration to residents and visitors. In the unique family atmosphere at the ashram and retreat, all work is done cooperatively, with the focus on inner awareness. In the spirit of love, which pervades daily life, creative efforts flower, and inner transformation is often quite dramatic. As they awaken to the inner awareness and outer commitment of meaningful action, Bapuji's teachings become the foundation of life for every member of the ashram. Bapuji calls this the path of Sanatan Dharma, or the path of eternal truth.
Deaf children can't
Many ashram
talk.
residents have jobs in surrounding communities. They bring the teachings of brotherhood into society, as Bapuji did, through the example of their life and attitude.
To them. Because deaf children have feelings too.
Yeah, but you have to teach us.
Okay. First you have to learn I. Put your hand like this. Oh yeah, that's right. I love you. That's right.
પ્રભુનો પરિવાર તે આપણું સાચું કુટુંબ છે.
Our family of the world is very vast.
એક જ
To learn to love this vast family, we must first learn to practice love in each of our own individual families. When our own love expands and becomes vast enough to encompass the whole world, we will then be able to love everyone. Until this love becomes the very aim of our life, we are living in darkness. You might ask yourself, if this love is so essential to everyone's life, how can I express it in practical ways? If I cannot express true love, how can my family be peaceful? To express love, a person needs to keep two principles in mind: commitment and service. Where there is no commitment, there is no love. The second principle, service, follows commitment. Wherever there is commitment, service follows naturally. Bapuji has given me so much of his love that usually I would say that it's overwhelming. Bapuji's expressions and his liveliness and his childlike quality is most magnificent. Anyone who has ever seen Bapuji, that's the one thing that is most striking and unique about him, that his childlike purity and comes through with every gesture. Everything that he says is so alive, so filled with prana and so much energy in it that there is nobody who can deny it.
2 or 3 times a year, Bapuji comes out of seclusion to speak to the ashram residents and guests. On these occasions, the residents dress in white in respect for their teacher.
अवश्य તે પ્રકારોનો તો ધ્યાનપૂર્વક અવલોકન કરજે.
He did not like the arrival of the newcomers. He came down from the branch of the tree and stuttered proudly towards the group of swans. Then he stood steadily and gazed at each swan from the head to tail. And soon after he asked in an unfriendly tone, "Where do you all come from?"
Bapuji's love for drama and storytelling brings each moment alive. This particular story is about a swan and a very critical crow who thinks he is a great teacher. When the swan and the crow go flying together, the crow soon learns a lesson in humility.
Beholding this proud walk of the crow and his mannerless speech and the stupid behavior, the old swans could not suppress their laughter. To flaunt with Guru is not child's play.
Bapuji's spiritual practices continue in ongoing meditation for 10 hours a day. His search for ultimate realization of the higher self is a source of inspiration for all those who seek transformation and inner peace.
Yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varchitaha jnanagni dagdha karmanam तमाहु पंडितं बुधाः.
He whose every undertaking is free from worldly desires and whose actions are burned up by the fire of wisdom, him the wise call the learned one.
The path of love is very ancient. When I was born, I received an initiation of love, and now with the same love, I initiate everyone else. Love is my only path. I'm a pilgrim on the path of love.
Jack Chambers, born London, Ontario, 1931.
All I want to do is get back onto the canvas that burst of energy that I got when something happened between me and the out there. Let's say that the why of the painting being done in the first place, why the painting gets done at all, is because there's a perceptual energy there that's on its way out. You've received it, and now creatively it's come up through your mental operations processes and it's on its way out.
I think what he's trying to do is recover in his painting the shock of recognition.
I'm not interested in art as art. I'm interested in life. And when you're interested in life more than you are in painting, then your paintings can come to life. The moment of perception is when ordinary objects become extraordinary objects.
A conventional childhood, school, sports, friends, and some wild times. He begins to paint and to write poetry. At age 18, he wins a prize in a local art show.
He had that just astonishing inner life. And his paintings consisted mainly of sitting on the edge of the bed and looking at his face in the bureau mirror. You know, he was like a man possessed. Outwardly, he could be quite a different kind of person, you know, very simple, kind, gentle. He had certainly made up his mind he had to get out of London. And when he had enough money, he just left, and he didn't know where he was going, or he knew that he had to get out.
More by chance than anything else, he ends up studying art in Madrid. 5 years of rigorous training at the Academy of San Fernando.
This grueling apprenticeship in Spain, where you have to go into the museums and the galleries and copy and copy and copy and submit these drawings again and again and again, year after year, before you're even admitted.
Estamos recordando la...
I remember very well that he was the one who worked the most. He was perhaps the most serious person I met here in Madrid. He did literally work from dawn to dusk, literally. I mean, if he didn't eat or if he didn't sleep was more or less besides the point as long as he painted.
1959, Chambers moved to the small town of Chinchon outside of Madrid.
The paintings of Chinchon are completely different to anything else he ever painted. He did identify himself, if you like, with everything that was around him. He did get the light of Chinchon, he got the atmosphere, he got the whole idea of a little village in the middle of the Castilian plain with this terrific sun and during the whole of the winter and so on. I mean, he got all that in his paintings.
It burst out in this very joyous way with the trilla, la trilla, you know, the two mules and that sort of stuff. It burst out, and then it settled down into a more sustained flow of darker images, more sinister images.
It was during his stay in Spain that Chambers converted to Roman Catholicism. There were moments of darkness and premonitions of death.
I can remember a very graphic dream that I had. It was a dream where I was in my room and I was bleeding. As I bled, my consciousness began to get alarmed. It didn't seem to be able to get free of this sinking ship. I began to feel weaker and weaker, and the consciousness became like a bird in a cage, and the bird was fluttering and frantically trying to get out of this thing, but there was no way for it to get out. The closer I got to death, the more alive things around me seemed to become.
When Jack came back from Spain, his mother was dying of cancer, which is the main reason why he came back. And his painting during that period was very much concerned with death.
Jack Chambers returned to London, Ontario, married, and had 2 children.
Coming back to Canada was like stepping into a new scene. I had a whole past there, which I could relate to, sort of like in a display case. Gradually, they all popped out, in these first few paintings of The Artist's First Bride and these things, they popped out really in a new environment.
Painting after painting showed his Argentinian-born wife Olga experiencing her new life in Canada.
I think the reality of the world is what Jack is most astonished by continuously.
His paintings are a part of life and a celebration of life.
What you're doing is seeing in his painting objects which in the actual world are always moving and fleeting and disappearing, and for that reason barely perceived at all, are suddenly very still, and therefore very much larger than life. By virtue of making them larger than life, but what you are doing, of course, in a very specific way, is taking them out of time. You're putting them into another dimension. But at the same time, even in that other dimension, they have the kind of hypnotic reality. So it isn't surrealism, it isn't magic realism, but it is the real, but the real intensified.
The silver paintings show a continuing preoccupation with light. As you move across the painting, the image changes from positive to negative and back again. Like film, these paintings exist in time as well as in space. Besides painting, Chambers became involved in filmmaking. He made several films that explored the themes of life, birth, and death. Circle was a film shot in Chambers' own backyard. Every day for a year, he shot 4 seconds of film from the same spot, recording the daily changes of light and color. Then, in 1968, at the height of his career, Chambers discovered that he had leukemia.
That'll, Jack, watch you don't get caught in that traveler. Keep that crank. Roundabout. Pull it in now. Pull it in.
Just imagine that you go into a coma. It's becoming dark.
Here she goes.
And at a certain point, it is virtual darkness, extinction. Then, miraculously, unexpectedly, you wake up.
Hi, fellas. Where's your sweater? Where's your sweater? Where's your sweater?
School.
What's it doing there? You need it tomorrow. No, I'm not laughing. You beat up my friend last week, too. What a guy. Hi, Bergie.
Every once in a while, he sees something out there in the way he saw it in that hospital the morning he woke up and, to his astonishment, discovered that he was alive. And the way he made the discovery that he was alive is that there were objects out there. And that, not his pulse, that's what affirmed the fact that he was alive.
Jack Chambers survived. He went on to paint his best-known works in a style which he describes as perceptual realism.
Painting, for example, gets born, let's say, because you just, as I said before, you just suddenly turn your head and you see something, and there it is. That kind of perceptual awareness, that instant of energy intake, happens.
Jack Chambers attempts to recreate this experience in his paintings. First, there is the photograph.
Most people think that when you're working from a photograph, all you're doing is copying the image from the photograph and putting it on the painting. With perceptualism, you have an energy awareness that infuses the object in the photograph. And that's the reason why it gets put down on the canvas.
Then there follows the incredibly difficult job of taking a perfectly inert photograph, which is simply a source of information, and using the photograph to recover on the canvas the luminous presence that that room had.
You know, what the photograph does is just to get it's a memory tool, because you can't carry away in your memory, the colors and all the detail and the composition and all the values and so on. So what happens is that when something out there really makes an impact on you, well, what you do is you photograph that, so that you have a memory, you've got a working tool there of what it looked like.
One day I was driving to Toronto, and I had the distinct sensation of driving through that landscape. I mean, literally through the landscape as painted. I felt that somewhere in that experience of driving through that landscape that day, I had captured whatever the emotion is that is in Jack's painting. The miracle is for Jack that anything exists at all.
It is this sense of wonder at the very existence of life around us that permeates the work of Jack Chambers.